How does a band create an album so legendary that collectors are willing to pay thousands for a single copy, only to vanish into thin air? Or how does a group influence some of the biggest names in rock history, yet remain completely unknown to the mainstream? Some of these bands were on the verge of greatness, but fate had other plans. Today we're uncovering 15 obscure bands from the 60s and 70s that only the most dedicated music archaeologists know. These are the hidden gems that shaped the sound of rock as we know it. Pioneers who broke new ground but never reaped the rewards. Their stories are a fascinating glimpse into rock's shadowy corners, where some of its most innovative sounds were born. Are you ready to discover your new favorite band from decades past? Let's begin. Number 1. The Move. Before Electric Light Orchestra took flight, Roy Wood fronted The Move.
The flowers in the breeze make conversation with the trees. We need to leave reality.
Perhaps the most experimental of the late 60s British bands. Their sound was a perfect fusion of psychedelia, pop, and proto-heavy metal that should have conquered the world. The Move had a spectacular run of UK hits like Fire Brigade and Flowers in the Rain. The latter holding the distinction of being the first single ever played on BBC Radio 1 upon its launch in 1967. Their music combined catchy hooks with intricate arrangements and frequently veered into experimental territory. So why aren't they household names? International superstardom was thwarted by constant lineup changes and limited exposure in America. Despite Roy Wood's uncanny ability to create catchy yet complex arrangements, The Move remained primarily a British phenomenon. However, their experimental style laid the groundwork for the progressive rock movement that would follow. Number 2. The Pretty Things, informally referred to as the Rolling Stones' Welder relatives. The Pretty Things were raw, outlaw psychedelic rock pioneers whose influence extends far beyond their fame. Their 1968 album, SF Sorrow, stands as one of the very first rock operas, predating The Who's Tommy by a full year. It tells the intense story of Sebastian F. Sorrow's crisis-filled life journey with a rawness that was years ahead of its time. With their ragged edge sound incorporating blues, rock, and psychedelia, they opened doors to what would come later, but bad management and endless chaos prevented them from breaking into the mainstream. Their inability to be marketed properly relegated them to the shadows, although their influence on punk rock and early glam is undeniable to music historians. Number 3, The Creation. If punk and glam rock owe a debt to anyone, it's The Creation. With their fuzz guitar riffs and preemptive sonic attack, they influenced later legends like David Bowie and the Sex Pistols. Their tracks like Making Time and Painter Man delivered catchy songs with screaming guitars and frantic but fashionable playing. Although they created a significant buzz within UK music circles with their revolutionary approach,
Making more excuses.
poor promotion by their record label and lack of nurturing in the American market kept them from breaking through worldwide. Their guitarist Eddie Phillips pioneered playing guitar with a violin bow years before Jimmy Page made it famous with Led Zeppelin. Music aside, they remain essential listening for anyone interested in avant-garde rock history. Number 4. Nas. Before Todd Rundgren became a solo star and renowned producer, he led Nas, a band that brilliantly combined British invasion harmonies with American garage rock sensibilities. Their song Open My Eyes remains a psychedelic pop staple, complete with lush harmonies and jangly guitars that encapsulate the late 60s sound. Unfortunately, internal tensions coupled with Rundgren's departure ended the band before they could achieve their true potential. Their music, however, still resonates with power pop and classic rock fans who appreciate their perfect blend of melody and muscle. Had they stayed together longer, Nas might have become one of America's definitive rock bands instead of merely a fascinating footnote. Number 5, the Soft Boys. The Soft Boys were ahead of the curve in blending psychedelic rock and post-punk in ways no one else was attempting at the time. Their 1980 album Underwater Moonlight became a touchstone that influenced alternative acts like R.E.M. and the Flaming Lips. With its freaky, otherworldly tone and unconventional lyrics. Led by the eccentric Robin Hitchcock, their sound wasn't readily classified into one specific genre in their day. This rendered them too weird for mainstream success. However, their inventiveness and experimental approach to music predated the alternative rock explosion of the late 80s and early 90s by a full decade. Number 6, Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band. Captain Beefheart, at the helm of his Magic Band, was the quintessential 60s and 70s avant-garde rocker. His 1969 masterpiece, Trout Mask Replica, is perhaps the most challenging but rewarding rock album ever created.
We got my mother and father. It ran down all my kin. Folks I know.
A double album of freeform compositions that sound simultaneously like they're falling apart and being precisely executed. Beefheart's fusion of blues, jazz, and freeform rock spawned an entirely new musical language. Despite his reluctance to adhere to the norms of the music industry, or perhaps because of it, Captain Beefheart remained on the edges of popular culture. His influence on experimental rock and on artists like Tom Waits and The Residents remains immeasurable, making him the quintessential musician's musician. Number 7, the Tubes. The Tubes were notorious for their shocking, flamboyant concerts that satirized the excess of the rock lifestyle, combining punk, glam, and performance art. Their anthem, White Punks on Dope, was a satirical take on the decadent rock scene of the time. The band's hard-hitting stage shows with outlandish costumes and elaborate performances often repelled mainstream crowds and prevented them from achieving broader success. They did eventually achieve some limited commercial success with tracks like She's a Beauty, though they remained cult artists due to their larger-than-life performances that were simply too provocative for Middle America. Number 8, the Fugs.
Like a monkey, hug like a castle, think like a darling, laugh like a lemon.
The Fugs were playing a combination of garage rock and political activism years before the word punk existed, blending poetry, anti-establishment sentiments, and raw musicianship. Songs like Kill for Peace and CIA Man were politicized rock manifestos that railed against the establishment with raw, angry sounds. Their hard-edged sound, often infused with socially rebellious lyrics, failed to appeal to mainstream listeners, but attracted a loyal cult following who appreciated their experimental and radical approach to rock music. CIA Man. As founding member Ed Sanders said, "We wanted to create a new type of American music that didn't pull any punches." They succeeded, but commercial success was never in the cards for a band so defiantly uncommercial. Number 9, the Chocolate Watch Band. One of the toughest American garage rock bands of the 60s, the Chocolate Watch Band blended blues, psychedelia, and punk energy into a potent mix. Their cover of Let's Talk About Girls became a youth rebellion anthem that combined raw intensity and off-the-wall energy that still electrifies listeners today. While they created intense live shows and a high-energy sound, they were handicapped by poor management and studio meddling, which prevented them from making the best use of their talents. Record executives frequently brought in session musicians to clean up their sound, a move that diluted their raw power. There's no denying their contribution to the garage rock and psychedelic scene, however, and they continue to enjoy cult popularity among fans of unfiltered rock music. Number 10, MC5. MC5 was a politically engaged proto-punk band whose live album Kick Out the Jams remains legendary for its raw energy and anti-establishment spirit. Their music was politicized, loud and fast, with tracks like the album's title song becoming anthems for counterculture movements across America. Their radical political affiliations and refusal to conform with the requirements of mainstream rock caused problems with their record label. With the FBI keeping a close eye on their activities, MC5 faced obstacles that decelerated their prospects for mass success. Nevertheless, their influence on punk rock is invaluable, with bands from The Clash to Rage Against the Machine acknowledging their debt to these Detroit revolutionaries. Number 11, the United States of America.
Love don't come easy, baby. Got to be slow.
The United States of America was a highly innovative group that blended psychedelic rock with pioneering electronic music techniques at a time when synthesizers were still rarities in rock music. Their self-titled album, released in 1968, fuses experimental soundscapes with synthesizers, tape manipulation, and avant-garde textures that were far ahead of their time.
Simple to talk about love.
Despite being groundbreaking in scope, the group never received the following they deserved and disbanded shortly after their first release. Their work serves as a touchstone for experimental and electrolux, with their influence felt by acts ranging from broadcast to contemporary electronic musicians. Led by Joseph Byrd, they created a vision of America's dark psyche through sound that was too progressive for their era. Number 12, Kaleidoscope, UK. One of the most innovative psychedelic rock groups of the late 60s, the UK's Kaleidoscope released their 1967 debut album, Tangerine Dream, no relation to the German electronic band of the same name, which is a breathtaking collection of rich, ethereal songs that marry rock with folk, jazz, and Eastern themes. Although they were highly innovative in their sound, they never gained popularity outside the UK, mainly because they lacked support from major record labels and weren't given enough coverage in the US market. Their music, however, is still treasured by collectors and fans of vintage psychedelic rock for its beautiful and intricate soundscapes that take listeners on a journey through kaleidoscopic dreamscapes. Number 13, Sir Lord Baltimore. Sir Lord Baltimore were among the first proto-metal trailblazers, their heavy, up-your-nose sound laying the groundwork for acts like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, before those bands became household names. Their 1970 debut album, Kingdom Come, was heavy, fast, and relentless, with raw guitar chords and thumping drums that defined what would later be called heavy metal. Unfortunately, their brutal music was too intense for critics and mainstream audiences at the time, and they were dismissed as a curiosity. However, their songs are now cult classics among metal fans who appreciate their pioneering work in shaping the genre. Rock critic Mike Saunders famously used the term heavy metal to describe their sound in 1971, helping to name the emerging genre. Number 14, Comus Comus were a genuinely unsettling group. Who wedded folk and progressive rock with weird, verging on horror atmospherics. Their first album, First Utterance, 1971, is a haunting and fascinating disc with threatening melodies and jarring lyrics that explore the darkest corners of the human psyche. Too intense for mainstream fans of folk music and too experimental for rock radio, they've remained a cult phenomenon since their brief existence. Their music has been rediscovered by later generations, who respect their ability to merge beauty and ugliness in ways that no one else dared to attempt. Current folk horror acts like Hex Vessel cite them as a primary influence, proving their dark vision was simply decades ahead of its time. Number 15.
Yeah, heard a funny thing.
Love, led by the enigmatic Arthur Lee, Love was one of the most experimental groups of the 1960s. Their 1967 masterpiece, Forever Changes, is regularly listed as one of the greatest albums of all time, marrying folk rock and orchestral instruments into a sound that was years ahead of its generation. However, although the album itself was critically acclaimed, internal band issues and their inability to tour extensively kept them from gaining the popularity they deserved. Arthur Lee's reluctance to leave Los Angeles severely limited the band's exposure, and their complex arrangements were difficult to reproduce live. Their influence on psychedelic rock and chamber pop music persists today, yet they never received the mainstream popularity their music should have achieved. Forever Changes stands as a testament to what might have been a perfect album from a band that seemed destined for greatness, but never quite arrived. These 15 bands may not have topped the charts, but their music still resonates powerfully today. If you're looking for something fresh from the past, these bands are the perfect place to start. They represent rock's hidden history, the innovators, the risk-takers, and the ones who were simply too ahead of their time. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into rock's forgotten history. Until next time, keep exploring the shadows where some of the brightest musical ideas were born.